Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. Hey everyone, Jon Hubbard here, Director at Boomer Consulting. With me today, I have Jim Boomer, CEO of Boomer Consulting. Hi, Jim.
Hi, John. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for joining me. So the theme of our conversation today is how to create strategy at all levels in your firm. And as the CEO of Boomer Consulting, you spend a lot of time, even internally with us, helping us clarify and set strategy, whether that's 10 years out, 5 years out, 1 year out, or even in a more short-term focus. You also spend a lot of time in firms helping them create their strategies. So when you hear the phrase, a unified firm strategy, what does that mean to you and why is that so important?
Well, when we talk about a unified firm strategy, it's really coming down to alignment. And by alignment, we've got everybody rowing in the same direction. We don't have people off, taking on their pet projects or initiatives that aren't in line with what we want to do as a team or an organization. So that alignment is one, about our strategies are aligned, but two, you have greater buy-in when everybody is in sync in terms of where they're trying to drive the organization. So whether it's our internal strategy at Boomer Consulting or working with clients and public accounting firms, that's where you got to start. You got to start with paint the picture of the vision that we want to be, and then we can become aligned and build strategies and initiatives around that.
Right. And so when we say at all levels, it can be sometimes tempting to think that the lower you go in an organization, the less unified you become. But I think what we see, especially in firms that are growing rapidly and have a lot of big ideas, is that the lack of alignment is even true at the top. Do you see that when you're working with firms?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's often a lack of alignment at the partner level. If you don't get that, you mentioned the staff level. If you don't involve them in the process, then you're going to have trouble having alignment there. A lot of that has to do with communication breakdowns, or they just feel like it's a top-down mandate or approach, and which doesn't tend to go well. So it depends what size the organization is. With us at 16 people, then it's a no-brainer for me that absolutely everybody on our team is part of the strategic planning process. As you get to a large firm, that's just not feasible, but you need to figure out a mechanism, whether it's a pre-strategy session, survey, or some way to hear their voice as well, because the worst thing you can do is just write them off, oh, they're just staff. The reality is they're the ones closest to the work and what's happening, and often the closest to the product that you're delivering to the client. So their input, their perspective is going to be different than the partners, but they're going to have really valuable information as well. So including as many people as you can at different levels and in different functional roles is critical.
Right. So let's dive into that a little bit. So obviously who you include in creating that unified firm strategy is really important. Let's talk about the process you would typically take an organization through, Jim, to actually create their unified firm strategy, all the way from the vision down to the short-term plan. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so, from a very high level, what we do is we gather some information about what the firm's done historically. So if they've done strategic planning, even if it's just internal or if one partner has put something on paper, we want to know where we're starting from. And then we use a tool called the perception survey that asks a series of 11 questions to just set essentially your own internal benchmark of how you're doing in a variety of areas when it comes to having a strategy, having accountability, communicating that strategy out. And so we come in with some numbers. We also have some benchmarking information we collect. So when we come on site, we've got some homework we did ahead of time. And then the typical process is, do some education in terms of what we see within the profession at a lot of working with a lot of firms and having a lot of firms involved in our peer group communities. We see and hear a lot. So doing some education is the starting point. Then you really want to, reflect on the organization from a dangers, opportunities, and strengths perspective. Also look at building. When I talk about vision, it's a little longer term. It's 5 years out, maybe 10 if you want to stretch yourself. It's kind of hard to, in these quick or rapidly changing times, to go 10 years out. So typically it's either 3 or 5, but you paint that picture, and then we start to go through a number of exercises to start to build the initiatives that support us getting to that vision. So in your vision, you're going to hit some things that you are not feasible to do in 12 months. But if you put your efforts in over the next 12 months, you'll move the needle closer to that longer term vision. And we see it internally at Boomer, like things that we thought were way out there and unachievable, how quickly we start to get closer and closer to those long-term goals when we put it down and align the strategy with the vision.
Right. And then do you turn those larger vision, larger strategy items into more bite-sized pieces for teams to rally around? Or how do you keep firms and those in firms kind of focused over the short term, let's say 3 months, to accomplishing those larger goals?
Yeah, so it's what you're getting to is a system of accountability. And basically, once you take it down to the individual level, which we use 90-day game plans, we've kind of transitioned a little more to building those in a balanced scorecard methodology. But the point being, we're doing regular planning and look backs at least on a quarterly basis. And so we are checking to make sure. I mean, not every goal that Jim Boomer has as an individual has to directly line to the strategic plan, but I better have the things that the organization is depending on me to lead or be a part of. I better have that reflected on my own personal plan, or
Right.
There's some kind of disconnect there. So you have to take it to the individual level, and then there has to be somebody. You can't just fill out some goals and nobody ever looks at them. I mean, most importantly, you never look at them. There has to be a system in place where you're looking back on a regular basis and then setting goals going for the next period going forward.
Right. So you've worked with, a lot of firms on this. Obviously, there's probably going to be varying degrees of success depending on the firm and their commitment to being held accountable and to the goals. But let's say for the listeners out there that know they need to create a unified firm strategy, and they are hearing some things that you're saying, and it's really resonating with them. Talk about some of the successes you've seen firms achieve by going through this process.
Well, some of the successes are, we started with this topic and we're kind of ending with it. If you can walk out of the strategic planning process with a more aligned team who feels like we're in this together and we're all driving towards the same longer term goals, and even in this given year, the same goals, you're going to be so much more effective. You're going to have morale's going to be higher. People are going to support each other. So, you're going to get alignment out of this, but you're also going to get a plan that you can take action on that starts to move you towards what you want to be in the future. And the process really forces you to stretch yourself to grow, not just growth from, top line or bottom line from a financial perspective, but grow in so many other ways and help your team grow in terms of their skill set, and whether you're upskilling or expanding the base of their knowledge around what their core job duties are. there's a lot of opportunity in terms of growth just from going through this process.
Right. So let's leave the listeners with kind of the next step, right? They've heard what you've had to say around creating a unified firm strategy. Maybe they want to read a little bit more about this or hear a little bit more detail. What's your recommended next step for the listeners?
Well, I think the easiest next step is, we built the Boomer Advantage Guide to Strategic Planning, where we basically give you the overview of the process that we walk through. Now, certainly we have some tweaks that happen as we talk to the firm and learn more about where their focus areas are, but it gives you a starting point. And so I'd encourage you to go to our website, download the Guide to Strategic Planning, read through that. That's a great starting point. And then, if you want to learn more, we'd be happy to talk to you. You can either call the Boomer Consulting offices or send an email to solutions@boomer.com, and we'll get you on a meeting with the right people to talk through it a little more.
Awesome, Jim. Well, I've taken enough of your time. This has been a great conversation, just focusing on how to create a unified firm strategy. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.